My name is Hawbaker. I picked my project on the 70s and the 1970s. My two main purposes were the fashion and the style and the pop culture. Um, Basically how life was lived and how it was different. As my introduction and everything, it was more called the me period. It was right after the Vietnam War, and everyone was very quiet, wholesome, simple, easygoing life. They weren't getting involved in anyone else's business. They wanted to be more happier, and happiness is peace and quiet. So after Vietnam War, everyone learned how to be themselves and be more open. And then, you know how the 70s is known for the craziness, colorfulness, all the bright colors. Well, it got into the music and the fashion. How the lifestyle was different from nowadays, well, a lot of people weren't judgmental. The kids went outside to play when they got home from school. They came in for dinner at 6, 7 o'clock at night, went back out to dawn or whenever your parents called you in. Teenagers had no TVs. You had 6 channels. It was Saturday morning cartoons, and you got up to change your TV. There was no remote. And it's just, everything was less expensive, too. You have, according to the peoplehistory.com, and by 1970, the cost for gas was either 86 cents around town, and that was during an oil crisis too, which we'll talk about later. A car was $3,200 to $5,700 for a brand new car, and for a new house, it was $23,000 to $58,000, and that's pretty cheap compared to today's world. I wouldn't mind having my car be that price. And the most two popular cars were the Volkswagens, the Bus, or the Bug. Those are the two big popular cars. And moving in, as of course, like I said earlier, we have only 6 TV stations and barely anything to watch. But we did get a lot of good TV shows that we still have on reruns today. We have like the Brady Bunch, Three's Company, Happy Days, and Schoolhouse Rock, which everyone knows because we watched it in elementary school as clips, and Lassie. So a lot of those slogans here today is from the TV shows. Also, big movies came out. Star Wars, The Godfather, Godfather Part 2, and Saturday Night Fever, which started the whole entire disco thing. Later on, there's also like big bands and everything really came in as for entertainment, movies, and education. Education was very simple, normal. It was a lot slower. You sat down and learned your stuff, and if you didn't know it, your teacher taught it to you over and over and over till you got it. It wasn't where like today's world where you sit down, you don't get it, you go find your own time to do it. They'd sit there and teach you all the way through your 12 years of high school. In college, it was a big deal, but if your parents couldn't send you to college, you weren't going. You were going to either do working or just going to the military or something else. As like I said earlier, the big bands were like the Beatles, the Beach Boys, the Go-Go Girls, the Queen, and Led Zeppelin, and AC/DC and Aerosmith were some of the biggest bands in the 70s that came around or went out in the 70s, and that music's still around today. I listen to a good amount of that music. Now moving from education to fashion, I know my grandmother told me as I interviewed her that she said there was a time where you walked out of your house and you didn't know what people were going to be wearing. It could be from bell bottoms to elevator shoes to black punk rock spiked hairstyles. She said when you go to the grocery store, it's a good view. You never know what you're going to miss. So as the fashion came along, there was more. It just got more crazier and crazier by the years go on, and let alone everything just got crazier. And this is like a picture from the Sears catalog from the 1970s when they first started. There's like the girls, the plaid, and all. That was a normal day in fashion right there, which is very outgoing. And that was guys' fashion, plaid jacket, khaki pants. It was a very different world. I got to see my grandparents' old school yearbooks and my parents' old school books. Never thought I'd see that fashion. Next slide. The big things that came out of the 70s that we all still know today, of course, the music and some of the TV shows that still are around today. But a lot of the big things were like some things I already talked about before. I found on historychannel.com. They had a big video of the 70s. I got to watch them play. And a lot of things came out from it. The computers, VCH tapes, inline skates, Pong, like ping pong. One of the biggest first video games. and sticky notes. A lot of the big events that happened, whereas like the Watergate scandal, which is like the Watergate with President Nixon was right there. And then in '79 we had our huge oil crisis going on, which made this is a picture of all the cars on gas days when you had days you can go get gas. If your license plate was an even number at the end, you had to go on even days to get your gas. And then if your number ended with an odd number, your gas could go on the odd days of the month to go get gas. And you would see signs everywhere. I should have one here. I forgot to put it up. Said no gas available, shortage of gas. So it became where they had to restrict your gas by like gallons and how much your car. And you can think back then, see if you had that big bus, it'd take a lot to fill up. Granted, everything looking back, there wasn't much there, but it was still, my mom and my grandmother told me it was both a fun time period. They said it was a lot different from today, where they could have different ways in life. But I know there's one big thing that affected my mom when she grew up, because she was a teenager at the time. It was the 3 Mile Isle incident we had, like when the radioactive iodine went out. And my mom told me that when she was in high school, everyone had to be evacuated, go home, and if then you were in the 10-mile radius of 3 Mile Island, right across the street, you had to get in like bunkers and everything. And if a girl was pregnant, they had to get out of the town. Some people were flying to Florida. In the end, that's the end of my presentation, but in conclusion, I found out there's a lot of difference and similarities about the 1970s and today's world. I learned that the life seems simpler and easier, but it really wasn't. There was a lot of different ways in life, and that you think it'd be easier, but it's really not. It's truly more different. And then when you try to compare generations, don't do it too hard because it might not work out.